Hello and welcome into the Locked On Wolves podcast. We are live on the postcast following the Timberwolves lost to Orlando Magic. Marney Gellner of Bally Sports North is with me to break down the game. The Locked On Wolves postcast starts right now.
You are Locked On Wolves postcast, part of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Marney Gellner from Bally Sports North is with me to break down the Timberwolves loss to the Magic. And Marty, this was a weird one. I'm not really even sure where to begin. I mean, we can start with the fact that the Timberwolves turned in another really exceedingly sloppy performance against a below 500 team. And while it's true the Magic have been much better in recent weeks, it's still a game that the Wolves really should have won and really, frankly, needed to have.
Totally agree. And something Chris Finch talked about before the game, just about approaching these games against lesser opponents. I guess we define lesser as having a worse record.
Yeah.
Orlando, yes, has been better, but Orlando was a 500 team in the month of January, not
Right.
20-5 or something like that. I think they went 7-7. So, it is a good team with good players, but the Wolves are better, and the Wolves are on their home court, and the Wolves should have won this game. They're now 5-7 against the bottom 5 teams in the NBA by record. 5-7. That ain't good.
Yeah, and when you say it like that, yeah, I mean, like it's we talked about this a little bit on the postcast the other night after the Wolves beat the Warriors on Wednesday, and obviously the Warriors aren't quite the Warriors yet, but they're still a good team. They still have Steph Curry, as it turns out, and we talked about like, hey, this is a really tough stretch of games, and Orlando's the one team that's under 500 and isn't won't be a playoff team. I mean, there's even there's a lot of teams kind of in that Western Conference, like the muck in the middle, that the Wolves are gonna face over the next couple of weeks. And Orlando was like the one that stuck out as like they should win this game. They'll be favored. They're at home. But we also kind of cautioned when we talked about this, like this is the MO of this team. Yeah. And like longer term, like second half of the season, and which I guess we are technically in the second half, but like moving forward, the Wolves have a tough schedule. We've talked about that too, like in terms of back-to-backs and road schedule and teams above 500 and all that stuff moving forward. And we kind of joked about like maybe that's a good thing because they've been so bad against the supposedly bad teams and so good against the good teams for the most part. So, I mean, who knows? This was just really weird. I mean, like Kyle Anderson played 5 minutes, left with what appeared to be back spasms again, was ruled out, I think, a little bit after halftime. So he only plays 5 minutes. You have Nate Knight starting the second half at the with the rest of the starters at the 4. But then he ends up not really playing. It ends up being a lot of Taurean Prince, a little bit of Nas and Rudy Gobert together. And then you have, of course, the melee that broke out. Just a weird game.
Yeah, and I said Luka Garza, and I guess he was playing more than 5, but I'm just talking
yeah.
Pieces you're plugging in. The fight, just that was wild. I mean, the arena, first of all, was pretty dead tonight. Not by numbers. It was a great crowd. It's a Friday night, 6-game homestand. This was game number 5. The Wolves have been playing well. It was packed into the upper level tonight. There was a significant crowd, but it was kind of dead because it was such a sloppy game, and there just wasn't a lot for the crowd to get up against. There wasn't a lot of energy. I mean, I've been at every Wolves game this season. There, especially in this last stretch in Memphis, both games against Sacramento, the Golden State game. There was, it was hopping. Like you could just feel like a good energy and a great vibe and a lot of just passion inside the arena. And tonight was pretty dead. I'll be honest, for the most part. And it's because the way the game went. And this Wolves team that we saw tonight playing on the court, which essentially was the same human beings, just didn't even look like the same team that had played in the previous 4 home games in this homestand. It's just bizarre how bottom teams can just completely change the Wolves, the way they play, their identity, their effort, their energy, all of that. So then when this fight happened, which was with a minute and a half to go in the third quarter, it absolutely lit a fire under this crowd. And I mean, everybody was just stunned and trying to piece together what happened. They're chanting for replays because there was not one single replay on the Jumbotron for the fans in the arena to see. which I get. I get you're not promoting that kind of stuff, but I felt bad for these people paying good money for these tickets, and they're in the dark until there's enough time for these things, the clips to start circulating around Twitter. Like these people, I mean, they literally chanted, "Show the replay,
Yeah.
show the."
Well,
it was crazy.
And then to not see the replay, and then to find out that actually 3 Timberwolves players were ejected versus 2 Magic players. And I don't know if there was an explanation at all, after the fact, but it seemed to me like Jaden McDaniels was ejected because he tried to pull somebody out of the pile, I guess, which is like, I mean, I don't know. It felt like that's what everybody was doing. It was a very weird, I don't know.
I don't know how Jaden McDaniels got ejected. There was a little bit of shoving on his part before he started pulling guys off, but that's technical to me. I would love to hear. There will be a pool reporter talking to the officials, and I hadn't seen that yet. I just finished a post-game show, and we didn't have that as part of our coverage. But last thing I wanted to say, though, Ben, about the crowd was that you mentioned the reaction when 3 Timberwolves got thrown out, but only 2 Orlando Magic. Well, the loudest reaction from the fans came when the announcement that one of the Magic players was Jalen Suggs, because he must have had 300 people in the building tonight.
Yeah.
He only comes to Minnesota once a year. He came once last year, and this year there were a ton of Suggs people. And I'm not kidding you. The loudest reaction was the announcement of that last name, which was Jalen Suggs. They were pissed.
Yeah, I guess, that's true. I mean, I hadn't considered that. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
he got Austin around the neck. I mean, I guess that was pretty violent.
Well, and then it felt like the crowd was a little bit more into it right after that, and then all of a sudden the Wolves were down. I think it got to 17 at that point. At one point it was 22, but I think after the fight the most it got to was 17, the deficit, and then the Wolves got it to within 10, and there was a little bit of life. It felt like, but then it got right back up to 14 or 16 or whatever, and yes, it got down to like 6 in the final 30 seconds. But I mean, it was a kind of a weird we haven't talked much lately about the Wolves not bringing effort consistently, and I think it's because the schedule's been hard, and so they've done that. There was that Rockets loss, which now I guess was almost 2 weeks ago, but they've played well because they've played good teams. And so we haven't really had to have this conversation of like, why do they play so hard one night and then not the next night in a while? And it's very strange. And I remember having that a little bit last year with this team, who, of course, at that point hadn't even been to the playoffs. But the question was like, I remember Towns saying that, like, hey, we think we're somebody, we haven't beaten anybody, that sort of a thing. And that's apparently what's going on this year. And you would think having guys like having some more veterans like a Rivers, having a Taurean Prince, Kyle Anderson, guys like that would kind of help with level-headedness. And I realize the irony of saying that in a game where Austin Rivers gets ejected for fighting. But, it's just like we're back to talking about that again. And that was the primary issue in this game. And I want to dig in a little bit on some specific issues. But, I mean, like if we're going to boil it down to a sentence, it was just sloppy. I don't know that it was straight lack of effort. It was just sloppy.
Yeah. So the term Finch used in pregame when talking about it was maturity games. He said, anytime we've had one of these maturity games, we haven't done very well. And then after the game, he described it as somebody asked about like the approach, not taking the right approach. And Finch said, I don't think it was that we didn't take the right approach. I think it was our approach was soft. So he called it a maturity game before the game, and then that the approach was too soft after the game. So however you want to sort of add those two together and describe it, I mean, I feel like it's pretty accurate. It is a sign of an immature team.
Yeah.
And I know we have some mature players, your Taurean Prince, your Kyle Anderson, your Austin Rivers. They are mature players, but how they're not able to influence the rest of the team or whatever happens. I mean, look at the turnover that happened at the exact time when the fight broke out between Mo Bamba and Austin Rivers. It was in the backcourt. Rudy Gobert is trying to pass the ball to Anthony Edwards with 0 defenders around, and the ball went through Anthony Edwards' legs. It's like you don't know which accident to look at. That turnover in the backcourt, or Austin Rivers and Mo Bamba throwing haymakers on the complete other side of the television screen. But that turnover happened more than once. I mean, it's incredible. There are no words. It's hold your head in your hands. It's what the hell is going on types of moments against the bottom teams in the NBA, and I do not know why, and I don't think the Wolves can tell you why.
Let's talk about our title sponsor of the show tonight. That's our friends at FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. Best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Marty, you started to talk a little bit about turnovers, and the Wolves finished with 20, which is obviously way too many. And they were -5 or in the turnover category. Orlando turned it over 15 times. But I put in my notes for this game, like it felt almost like like each quarter kind of had its own like mini narrative. And the first quarter to me was all about sloppy offense. Like it was 8-2 for what seemed like 10 minutes in the first quarter because the Magic just couldn't score. They were turning it over. Then the Timberwolves were giving it right back. They were missing open jumpers. It was just really sloppy offense. And then it kind of turned into the second quarter was just missed layups, missed bunnies at the rim, missed putbacks. And then the defense started to slide. And then I think most of the rest of the game, it was mostly lack of perimeter, point of attack defense. And then ended up playing catch up for basically the last quarter and a half. But the sloppiness was kind of what, like that's what the tone that was set early in this game was. Bad passes, missed jumpers, misses at the rim, and it was giving by record a bad team, one of the bottom 5 teams in the entire league, a glimmer of hope early in this game when they were struggling too. The Wolves failed to really pounce, and then that's what led into all the other issues the rest of the game.
Yeah, I guess I would describe all that as sloppy and lack of attention to detail, or maybe Chris Finch's word, soft. The approach was soft. I mean, that's what you get, those kinds of turnovers, not finishing on what should be rather easy shots. Like all of that kind of falls in that same category. And you and I have talked about it, Ben. I mean, how many games have we said, just no, not attention to detail against Detroit, against Oklahoma City. Yeah, it's and I mean, Paolo Banchero started 1 for 10 in this game. How do you not capitalize on that? Orlando had a season high 72 bench points, 4 bench players in double figures, and Jonathan Isaac with 9. So 4 guys in double figures off the bench and the other one with 9. I mean, that's incredible.
Well, the Wolves went how long in the third quarter without a single bench point? Luka Garza ended up getting a ton of, it wasn't really garbage time because they got it to within 2 possessions, but as the Wolves were playing catch up, he got like 5 offensive rebounds late in the game, a bunch of putbacks, a couple of threes. So, I mean, besides Garza's effort, Naz Reid would have been the only player off the bench for the Wolves with double figures with 10. And I mean, other than Garza, like you could look at this game and there's some games on the full post game podcast that I do on Locked On Wolves. I'll do individual studs and duds. Like usually it's the 3 players that played the best and 1 or 2 that I thought had a tough game. And sometimes it's actually tough to find 1 or 2, at least the last couple of weeks, that really didn't play well. And it's kind of the opposite in this one. Like, I don't know that anybody could look themselves in the mirror and say, I played a really solid game, other than maybe Luka Garza. I mean, D'Angelo Russell had moments, but there were some bad turnovers in there. And he was part of the point of attack defensive issues. Naz had some positive moments, I guess. But it really didn't. It was certainly not Anthony Edwards' best game. It just collectively, this was like an all systems failure. And we've seen recently where Ant and D'Lo have kind of dragged this team to a couple of wins. Like the Golden State game is a pretty good example. Naz obviously was a big part of that too, where they didn't play well for most of the game. And then it was like, okay, our best players, no Cat in that game, no Rudy, were able to deliver us. And that just didn't quite happen in this game. And nobody else came to the party really at all. Or really I shouldn't say nobody else, really nobody. I don't know that anybody had a really good individual game for Minnesota.
I mean, Garza would be the best I could come up with because of he had 17 points in the fourth quarter, but a lot of those came when Orlando was just kind of, trying to run the clock. And you mentioned D'Lo. Okay, he had 15 in the fourth. That was great. He had 3 turnovers in 6 minutes in the first quarter. So if you're putting together an entire body of work and saying, tell me who played a good game tonight, you'd be hard pressed to find someone. Yeah, it just, I mean, as much as energy is contagious, the good shots are contagious, bad shots are contagious, sloppy play is contagious. It's incredible. It's like a psychology study of the human brain and how it is all connected. But it comes to light when the Timberwolves play inferior opponents. And I got to believe that's on their minds tonight, too. But at this point, they know the record. They've heard it. People are talking about it. People are writing about it. People are asking them questions about it. So then they're aware of it, and they're still not able to overcome it. And maybe it's in their heads now and working against them because it's a prominent quality of this team. But here we are, thinking, oh, thank goodness we play Denver, the number one team in the West, the next 2 games, because we'll play so much better.
It's so weird, but I mean, that's kind of where we're at. And like, you look ahead, and it is like 500 and better teams, right? 2 games against Denver, then Utah, Memphis, Dallas, all 500 or better. Washington, who at the moment is 3 games under 500, and then Charlotte. But the Wolves have already lost to both the Wizards and the Hornets this year. So you're talking, 5 good teams, 500 or better teams that are likely to make at least the play-in in the West, if you include Utah in that. And then Washington and Charlotte, 2, under 500 teams the Wolves have already lost to. So it's just a very odd stretch. And like, if you told me that the Wolves would win 3 out of the next 5 or 4 out of the next 5 against all these good teams who they've beaten Denver already, they've beaten Utah already, they've beaten Memphis already. So yeah, I mean, like, here we are. Like, if they play how they have all season, they could be, 4 games above 500 going into those quote unquote easier games against the Wizards and Hornets.
And that is the frustrating reality of it. When you start looking at these games of, well, if you didn't do that, we'd be here. If you didn't do that, we'd be here. And every time they move up into 6th or 5th in the Western Conference, and you're like, oh, we're just a game out of 4th. And if we had only beaten Charlotte and Detroit, that's where we'd be. But Chris Finch, he has said this line before, and he's going to keep saying it because it is so true. This team can beat anybody, and they can lose to anybody on any given night. And it is 100% true.
And that's a perfect note to end on. The Wolves take on the Nuggets on Sunday. That's a 6 p.m. Central tip. And we'll, of course, go live to discuss it on the live postcast about 45 minutes or so after that game. We'll do that after every Wolves game. So make sure to follow Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube to be notified when we go live. We also post this on the Locked On Wolves audio feed. So wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find this after the fact if you can't join us live. So make sure to do that as well. A big thank you for watching. A big thank you for listening. We'll catch you next time.